All right, so it looks like there could be another trug walk on the horizon. This came out of nowhere, but yesterday Brendan Schaub was over on Instagram chumming it up with Annie Lederman, the trug walk survivor. So I think everybody's pretty confused by this. This started with Esther, the other girl from Trash Tuesday, on Instagram. I think she commented on a post from Annie, and she said, heard a new pod called Trash Wednesday is coming, and she tagged Brendan Schaub. And then, of course, people in the comments had to point out that it's Trug Walk Wednesdays. And somebody else mentioned that Andrew Schultz owes him $15K. It's crazy. People are actually sticking up for Brendan here. They're trying to get him this money. And I agree. I think Schultz should pay up. I mean, they took this to the highest court. Rogan said that Brendan gets the $15K if he doesn't put out the promo. If he didn't get it, that's pretty messed up. All right, so after Esther commented this, Annie Lederman replied, and she said, there are only 3 people on earth who will understand this. I'm kind of shocked to say this, but Brendan Schaub is one. And then Brendan actually responded with some emoji. So it sounds like maybe they recorded a podcast together. That's probably my best bet. Either recently or when all the drama went down and they're deciding not to air it. Or maybe they are going to air it and this is just like a teaser or something. Or maybe they decide not to air it and they're just using this to get some attention because they missed out on a lot of views if they didn't air it. Like the Tiger Belly episode that Brendan went on after all the drama. That's one of the most watched Tiger Belly episodes. It'll probably be the most watched eventually. So if he went on Trash Tuesday, I think that episode would probably get a couple million views at least. And it probably would have been good because Brendan denies the whole trug walk. With Kalila, he admits that happened. He messaged her and everything like that, and he regrets it and he apologizes. With the trug walk, last time I heard, during the Tiger Belly podcast, he denied that. But it looks like something probably happened after that podcast because him and Annie are following each other on Instagram now, and he's commenting on her posts. So it seems like they're friendly with each other. I don't know what happened there. Or maybe Mark still has access to Brendan's Instagram, and he's just trying to troll him here. But I think we probably would have known by now. Or it's possible maybe Brendan and Annie have been bonding over how much they hate Mark. Mark, he's been talking a lot of trash about Brendan and Annie. He said that Annie will probably never see her on the Joe Rogan Experience again. Like Joe Rogan's done with her. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about it all down in the comments. So also in this video, I wanted to talk about Brian Callen's appearance on George Janko's podcast. Logan Paul's co-host, who also had an incident with Bobby Lee. If you don't remember, Bobby Lee was on Logan Paul's podcast, and he kept making fun of George, and eventually George got sick of it, and he walked off, and it was a pretty big deal. I talked about it. A lot of other people did as well. And now it seems like him and Bobby are kind of cool with each other, though. Unlike Brian Callen's relationship with Bobby. Obviously, Bobby is done with Brian after the whole thing with Brian calling him up and flipping out on him because he thought he's running the fight in the kids' subreddit. And Brian can at least admit what he did was wrong, and he apologized for it. He says he regrets it, and it sounds like he respects Bobby's decision. So he was talking about it with George a little bit.
What was the most hate you've ever had in your career? And what was a stumbling thing? Because I learned, believe it or not, from the Bobby Lee situation when all that shit spiraled.
I had the same thing. I love Bobby, but he's mad at me.
Now?
And I took responsibility for it. Yeah, well with Bobby, Brendan was getting a lot of hate. And then some people came to us and said, here's where it's coming from. And I made the mistake of jumping to conclusions. I spoke out of turn, and I love Bobby. I've known him I love the guy, and I've known him for way too long. And I was wrong, and I've apologized and everything else. And it's one of my biggest regrets I've ever done.
Really?
Yes, I love him, man. He's my friend.
I love how me and you both have that same story.
Yeah, but you got to admit, you have to own up to what you did. And and we had a talk. And I said, you're right. I'm wrong, and I'm 100% wrong. I was outside of myself. I was defending my Brendan, who I love. That's my brother. And I got emotional, and I was defending him. And the wrong guy Bobby was 100% the wrong person to
put the heat on.
Put the heat on.
Yeah.
And I was just wrong. And sometimes you're just dead wrong, and I was. And I said it, and I've owned it, but it doesn't matter.
How long ago was this?
About now a year.
It's crazy. It's been a year already. So maybe Brendan and Annie got together for like a trug walk reunion or something like that. Maybe that's what they're up to. No, but it's funny that George, it sounds like he's not even aware of any of this. But also he was smart enough to put this in the title and put Bobby Lee in the thumbnail. Like that's pretty good clickbait. And also, he brought up Brian Callen's fight with Joe Rogan. If you remember that classic video, I've talked about it a few times on this channel. And of course, Brian always claims that it's a joke and he was messing around. It was a bit he was doing which it kind of was, I'll admit that. But also the way Joe reacted, it sounded like something Brian does all the time. And it's at a point where it's like, all right, dude, you obviously think you're a tough guy. Like, he loves talking about getting in fights. I always say on that podcast, The Fight and the Kid, the comedian wants to be the fighter and the fighter wants to be a comedian. It's so backwards. All right, so that's about it for this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about all this. Then check out my Patreon account. I have a bunch of videos up there. I'm going to be posting another one probably in a few days or sometime next week for sure. I'll put a link to that in the description. And then make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.